me begin today by congratulating all of you graduates for your marvelous achievement and extending my congratulations also to everybody else, to the families and the instructors and the support staff who all helped you get here and who share in your achievement. It is a rare and great privilege to be asked to address graduates at the moment of their convocation, and I have been thinking very seriously for the past several months about what I would say to you today. A bit more than a year ago, I had the occasion to address another convocation at another university, this one on the East Coast. And at that point, the world was only very tentatively emerging from the financial crisis and what had looked for a while like a major depression and a drastic reordering of the global economy. And few graduates last April had particularly good employment prospects. They were seeing a lot of the ambitions they might have had or plans they might have had at the outset of their degree circumscribed quite rapidly. And the mood then was frankly somber. So at first I was feeling a bit upbeat about speaking to you a year later. The economic picture has brightened, if not completely improved. And then came this oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, and the horror playing out in the Gulf enrages me not simply at the level of foundering pelicans or spawning tuna, but because of what it has revealed to us about the cavalier incompetence of oil companies, the complete lack of competent oversight, the absence of any real stewardship of the environment, and most of all, I'm terrified by the lack of any real serious conversation that seems to be occurring about how the hell are we going to change things really fast so we use way less oil. And it seems to me, with that in mind, that the potential collapse of the global financial system rather pales in comparison to what we've done and are doing to our ecosystem. Graduates, the world in which you are about to step forth has been profoundly screwed up by my generation and those who came before me. We are handing you a stinking mess, really, and I apologize for that, although my apology and 50 cents will buy you a cup of coffee. But I also appeal to you to please do better, strive to be different than all of us who came before you. For all that the state of the world today fills me often with rage or despair or both. I also have great confidence that you can do better and you can make things better. In my time as a foreign correspondent, I have covered, as you heard, some horrific wars, some devastating disasters, but I have also covered stories. I have covered the provision of life-saving AIDS medication to 3 million people in Africa when everyone, absolutely everyone, said that it could never be done and there was nothing to do for those people but let them die. I have covered the near eradication of polio globally, and I'm confident that within the next couple of years I will report on the story when we say that polio is gone for good. I have covered the drastic drop in child mortality in some of the world's poorest countries, and that was a victory that was achieved by people with generally grassroots health educators with a grade 3 or a grade 4 education. And those stories thrill me not just for the news themselves, but because each of them is an affirmation of the great change that is possible from committed and imaginative people who get up one day and decide that they want things to be different, and you can be those people. I tried in pondering what I would say to you today to think of useful advice that I could give you, useful things that I wish people had said to me on my graduation day. I ultimately concluded that really I only had one lesson gleaned through my own experience. I graduated into the teeth of a harsh recession, an economic recession in the early 1990s, and there were no jobs at all for newly minted journalists or anyone else in any other field. And well, at first I did the obvious thing, and I went to graduate school and got $40,000 more student debt because that seemed helpful. But that was only good for a year of avoiding reality, and the recession went on. And so I bought my first Mountain Equipment Co-op backpack, and I headed for the Middle East to be a freelance journalist. And it was really, really hard. I was broke, I was alone, I was out of my league, I had no idea what I was doing. I was often literally cold and hungry, or cold or hungry, because I couldn't afford to buy both food and kerosene for the only heating system that we had. However, I was also too proud to come home. And because I was broke, I lived in a Palestinian village, and I shopped in a local market, and I took the local bus, and pretty quickly I learned good Arabic. And of course, the market for journalists who spoke Arabic was about to improve quite dramatically due to some global events. And because I was way out of my league, I landed in Beirut moments before the Israeli army invaded. And so 2 weeks later, I was working on a cover story in Newsweek magazine, whose employment would imminently help pay off that student loan. And eventually I was able to come back to Canada, and after paying a few newsroom dues, work my way into a job as a war correspondent. And it all happened much faster than it probably would have if it had happened at all, if I had got the job that I originally envisioned getting right out of school on my first day. Along the way, I got to tell a lot of important stories. I covered the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. I covered the return of the PLO to the West Bank. I also got to race camels in the Sinai Desert. I got to dance in a nightclub, an underground nightclub in Beirut with the drag queen who was the son of the sheikh who founded Hezbollah. Don't tell his dad. And the point of this story is that sometimes your bad luck turns out not to be so bad, that you learn the most from the hardest things. About 10 years ago, I was working on a book that had me spending time with a lot of elderly female pilots, and some of them had learned to fly, had flown with Amelia Earhart, and they told me many of them had taken as their personal logo, and I went on to take as mine, Amelia Earhart's personal logo, which was that courage is the price that life demands for granting peace. Take the risks, make the mistakes, because they lead you to some of the best places. Graduates, I have one last thing to tell you. Those places you go, you won't go alone. Something else happened to me when I started in those early years of working overseas. I developed an understanding of my privilege as a Canadian in a new way, and a sense of how little I really understood about how the world worked, of what life is really like for what I would soon come to realize is the vast bulk of people on the planet. Many of you will go out into the world to travel, to work, to learn, and you will see some of this, but I hope that you will come to understand, as I did, that it is not just a matter of looking. Even if you never leave Guelph, if you spend the rest of your life in wonderfully wealthy Canada, you are in myriad ways connected to people in every other corner of the world, and I would go so far as to add that you are responsible for those people, for how they live. If, like I do, you have an iPod or a BlackBerry, then you are connected to the people, many of them teenagers, many of them enslaved by rebel groups, who dig for the coltan in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Coltan is that little mineral that you need to make all of our gadgets. If, like I do, you have jeans from Old Navy or t-shirts from Gap, then you are connected to the women in Bangladesh who sewed them, who earned $5 a day, and who cannot improve their economy into better paying jobs because of our trade restrictions. As Canadians, you are connected to the children in Swaziland who will not go to school tomorrow, who will never celebrate the occasion that you are having here today, because our government and the other governing members of the World Bank forced the government of Swaziland to charge fees for primary school, even though our schools are free. And if, like me, you enjoy the occasional Starbucks latte, then you are connected with the women who earn 70 cents a day sorting coffee beans in the factories in Addis Ababa. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, I always buy fair trade, terrific. The women who sort the fair trade beans earn 96 cents a day. They're glad about that. I think that we have to ask if that's good enough. We are connected to these people, and even if we never leave Guelph, we can have an enormous impact on their lives. Class of 2010, that's your challenge and it's your opportunity. I'm not saying that you must all pick up and go to med school and become doctors who can administer antiretrovirals and move to Africa and run an AIDS clinic, that you should become a climatologist or devote your life to lobbying for fairer trade rules, although fantastic if you do. I am asking you, as you prepare to put your time at university behind you and your lives become ever more complicated and more demanding, and it feels like, it will start to feel like you have less and less and less time to think about the things that are important, the big picture issues, remember that you are connected and you are responsible. Find the time to use this wonderful education that you now have and be critical, ask questions, be engaged, raise money, raise awareness, raise the alarm. Remember that there is no iPod fairy, there is no latte fairy. People, usually poor people, work to give us the life that we have. There are many ways in which you can start to change the life that they have. I wish you courage and I wish you strength. You have my congratulations and my thanks for this great honor.